In today's episode of the Arkatech Beatz Music Business Podcast, we're talking about how they use hip-hop music to destroy a generation. We're watching our community really just unravel with the current murders and so forth and so on. And we wanted to talk about how people use the music against our own community. Let's talk about it.
Arkatech Beatz.
What's up, everybody? It's the Arkatech Beatz Music Business Podcast. We are your hosts, platinum producers, Arkatech Beatz. I'm Juggernaut.
I am Mike Trauma D.
And collectively, we are platinum producers, Arkatech Beatz. If this is your first time here, make sure you're hitting that subscribe button, making sure you're hitting those notifications. And today we wanted to kind of get into a topic because, we were talking about just the state of music, the state of hip-hop music. And we were talking about basically how the music is being used to destroy a generation right in front of our eyes. And, we wanted to kind of talk about that and talk about what we can do to combat that and what new artists could do to kind of elevate themselves and elevate the music and elevate the culture as we move forward. But the state of hip-hop is crazy right now, and we wanted to kind of talk about that.
You know what's funny, Jug? Like, if you ask somebody else, they may say, "Oh, the music is fine. It's a great time for hip hop." It really makes you wonder: is it an age thing? What is it? There's so many different beliefs, and point of views when it comes to the stage of hip hop. I mean, it's a debate. I look at hip hop right now, and it's definitely not what it used to be. It's definitely more violent. It's definitely more promiscuous. It's definitely like 10 times more influential, it feels like. But I also have to say to myself, did we do this? Did we birth this? Did we allow this? Did we steer the next generation in the wrong direction? Because there were signs, there were flags, there were people out there saying, "Don't do this, don't do that," and we scoffed at them. We called them names. We called them sellouts. We said, "You don't know nothing about the community. You're not of the culture." We said all of this and that. But now looking back, you got to wonder, were they right? You got to look at the other side of the argument, sit at the other side of the table and say, wait a minute. I mean, I sat on that side of the table long enough. You got to look at it from the other side and say, wait a minute, was there some truth to the arguments they were saying? Are we hurting our community? Are we responsible? It's up for debate.
It's really up for debate because when you say that, it's like we go back to those days when folks were trying to determine whether or not they were going to put parent advisory labels on albums, right? So we're talking about the early Two Live Crew days, the early Death Row days, and you had a movement of activists that were basically saying that this music is detrimental to the community. The C. Dolores Tuckers, the Tipper Gores. Folks were having congressional hearings. People were talking about how this music could be detrimental to women, to community at large. And to your point, what you said was we didn't really care to hear what they had to say. We said that they were basically out of touch, too old to understand what was going on in the community. But when you look back at it in retrospect, you say, okay, they obviously knew something that we didn't know. And what's very evident now, and when I even look back at even some of the older, just the music, blaxploitation films, things like that, we're very much influenced by media. And I think that has been, that's being understated. I think as a community, all of our trends and everything seems to be coming or being derived from our own media, whether it be music, film, and we take that and we make it into our culture. And then the problem has been is that we've never controlled our own media. We've never controlled what gets released. We never control how we're seen. We never was, if it's Good Times, if it's the Jeffersons, if it's whatever we were watching back in the days, it's like we didn't control what those images look like. So now when we talk about the music and how the music has evolved, even if we're talking about NWA from back in the days or BDP or whatever, it's like those things were still being controlled by the major machines to come out. They allowed it to come out. So we have to ask ourselves, it's like, did we drop the ball, or were we asleep at the wheel? Were we exchanging, the notoriety, fame, and money, right, to basically in exchange for this music that we call real? Mm-hmm. And look where we are right now. It's like the culture is basically in a loop that we can't seem to get out of. And now it's like a declining loop. So now it's like not only is it in a loop, but it's getting worse. So I don't know what the answers are. And then to your point, I feel sometimes a little bit responsible for that too, because some of that music was that we created. Some of that is some of the backdrop.
Right.
In our heyday, we wanted to make the most aggressive music that we could possibly make. It was the music that we thrived off of. It's the music that we felt, that we loved. But we didn't really understand that, wait a second, if everybody's shooting up, did we program the next set of gangsters?
Right. If we're busy selling dope, the next generation, are they the ones taking the dope? Yes,
and you saw that happen in real time.
Right. I mean, look, as producers, we make records based on how we feel, the environment we're in. So of course, if you're going through some rough times, your music may come out aggressive or sad or whatever the case may be. That given. But what's happening is the records that's been putting out over the years and years and years, and the artists that are, displaying their truth, it's no longer looked at just as entertainment. It's sunken into the way of young kids thinking. So, the argument of, it's just entertainment, we can't go by that.
We can't go by that anymore.
It's not just entertainment. It's doing a whole lot more. It's actually programming, and it's kind of crazy, man. And it's really sad, to be honest with you, that we as the OGs are responsible and, we gotta take some accountability. And a lot of OGs are, telling the youth this and that their music is trash, their music is garbage, and this and that. But we gotta hold them accountable. This is really your fault. As the experiences that you had working with these record labels, these new artists shouldn't be getting horrible deals. As a matter of fact, if you feel that way about the music, where is your company? Where is your record label that's supposed to be finding the new talent that puts out the music that's going to help this generation? Where's that?
That's real.
You don't see them. All these OGs that were very successful in their day, where is your record company that will allow this culture of ours to flourish the right way? It's like they left the game, and they left it in the hands of kids that are trying to figure it out on their own. And they're trying to get the bag.
But at the same time, I think what happens is that I think some of the OGs may have been trying to handle it on the back end, trying to reach out to some of the younger guys. And then what you realize is that, you can lead horses to water, but you can't make them drink.
I think also, yes, I think they just reached out to the wrong type of artist.
I think the artists, I think what we have right now is we have an inability to critically think. I think that's like this. That's, to me, is what's apparent. is that there's a lack of critical thinking now. It might be too much drugs, it might be too much this, you know what I'm saying? But it's a lack of critical thinking. And then what we're seeing is we're just seeing the music just continue to degrade. And then as the music degrades, then what we start seeing is more more behavior that mirrors the music. So as the music starts to become, let's say, just more violent, then we see more violence.
Right. And it continues to feed each other.
Right. So if we see more, prostitution talk, you see more of that popping up. You know what I'm saying? And this is just what it is. And I think we've become that generation or that culture that, hey, if you want them to do something, just put it in the music. For folks who haven't seen Who Cloned Tyrone, that's basically what the movie is about. Is about basically how people can be mind controlled very easily, and how our culture is just mind controlled, over everything in every facet of life. And we just have to look at the situation. And it may look like satire, but I think people really need to see the hidden messages behind that.
Wow. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And so I'm thinking now. So when we were talking about earlier, we were really having this debate, like, okay, what's the difference between then and what's the difference between now, right? Oh, and my contention is the violence has always been apparent. Mm-hmm. We just didn't have the internet. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have camera phones. We didn't have all this stuff, 24-hour news coverage to highlight how bad it is. The other conversation that we were also having in the back end too is that, there's a lot of talk that we're not producing anything in society that's meaningful at this point, as in our community. Mm. And that leads us to a very, very scary place. Like, okay, if you're a part of society and everything that people see of us is always negative, how long before do you get the revamped 1994 crime bill? Like, how long before that actually happens? Like, how long before that goes down? It's like, if all we continue to see is negative, right? And then what I would like to say to Black-owned media out here, we're also responsible for this, right?
Yeah.
There isn't a place where you can go to the other cultures and have negative portrayals of their people.
Right. Yeah. There's some medias right now we could go to, and I'm not going to shout them out, but when you go to these platforms, and I remember you were specifically talking about one in particular at one time, that every time you go on this website, they're always portraying Black folks, our culture, in such a negative light. Always a fighting video, always a shooting video, always something.
Oh, the video,
yeah,
something.
And the thing about it is, some of them would say rapper, and who is this rapper? You never heard of him. Knock it off.
Right.
If he don't got a record deal, he's not a rapper. He's just, a regular whatever. And they use these things to kind of just tie in the negative stuff with rapper.
But this is what I'm saying. Again, we've been talking about this thing for probably more than a year. Is you have these media outlets that seem to make their money from the negative news.
Yeah.
Right? From what you call it. Again, you do not have a singular website where you can go get negative videos, images, anything of any other culture on the planet.
For another.
Yeah. Like, you don't have one that's going to be, like, you don't have a Spanish version of World Star, or you don't have an Italian version of that, or you know what I'm saying, or
even let's go into music. You don't have a just negative country music.
No, you don't have it. Like you don't have. It's only our culture that we have that. So basically, what happens is that, and then what people don't realize too, this is social media. Is monkey see, monkey do.
Yep.
Right. So now it's not about just highlighting how it's funny. You're influencing.
Right.
You're influencing. You're programming the next person to put alcohol in themselves and light themselves on fire. And then you'll call it the flame challenge. Or you'll tell this person that, you know, you'll tell them to eat this hot pepper chip that'll put people into the hospital, and this is the new hot pepper challenge. How stupid can the next person be to do the next thing?
How did we get here? Like how did we get this dumb or this like?
You see what you just said? Like, how did we get this dumb?
Like, you want the fame that bad that you're willing to risk your life, limb, freedom. You know, there's people doing crimes and showcasing it on social media. So,
it's because we've given them nothing else to live for, bro. Or even we haven't highlighted that there's anything else to live for. The only thing that's important is the notoriety and the fame.
So let me ask you something. So as far as notoriety and fame, is that something that's instilled in just human beings that you want to be famous so bad? Or is that something that's been taught, learned? What is it about fame? What is it about notoriety? Is this something as far as in our community and our culture that because of the lack of OGs and parents or role models, that notoriety is almost like love, you know, that affection that you need to feel important? Like, is this something more to it that people are craving, why they are doing whatever it takes to be famous?
It could be a combination of that, but I think a lot of it is going to come from just the simple fact that you no longer have to do anything or be anybody to become famous. You don't have to have a talent, right? Social media has now lowered the standard. You know, we used to complain about there being gatekeepers in the music business. We used to complain about there being gatekeepers everywhere. And then now when you remove the gatekeeper is what kept the content at a certain standard.
Yeah.
So now we've removed the gatekeepers. The floodgates are open through the internet. Everybody can make money, right? But what's the cost, right? So yeah, we'll get you paid, but now you're going to get paid to do what? You know, what makes you popular? Do you have a talent? Are you a writer? Are you an actor? Do you dance? You know, do you play basketball good? Are you like, you know, a good criminal attorney? Like, what makes you a situation? What makes you important? And social media has now changed that, where you can now become famous in an instant. You can become famous for essentially, you know, farting on camera. You know, and that's the situation that we're in right now. So now everybody says, well, damn, if this person was able to do that, let me just see if I can up the ante. And we talked about this on another thing. It's like everybody keeps trying to up the ante, keep trying to find the next ridiculous thing to do, because you no longer have to have true talent to become famous anymore. You know, you don't have to be talented to make money. And you could be in a situation that's so destitute that you're willing to do anything, right? Because you're looking at, you know, a crisis of economics in our country, especially if people in our community, and people are looking to do anything to change it.
So that leads me to ask, does there need to be some sort of gatekeeping, some sort of age requirements, or some sort of test a person has to pass in order to be a part of this culture, to be an influencer, I should say?
I don't even know if it's that. I think what has to start to happen is, you know, in other communities, you have institutions that are created to ensure that you cannot defame, you cannot speak against, you cannot
that is sort of like a gatekeeper.
Yeah, and nobody else could do it either. So not just you and your community, not just the gay community, not just you being gatekeepers for yourselves, but you also make sure that no other communities can exploit or can do things that are negative to your community. And I don't think that we take it serious enough. See, like how those folks, they're not going to let you say certain things about their community. They'll cancel you. They'll make sure every business is turned on your back. You can't do that. So we have to start looking at stuff the way that they look at stuff. We have to say, okay, if we're not going to control our culture, if we're not going to control the way things are seen, like we have to start making the standards and say, okay, this is no longer acceptable for us because it's going to destroy us. It's going to put us into a situation where we become useless in society. That's what we're. And when that happens, the only thing left is slavery back again. And people don't really seem to understand that. Like that's what's if you look down the situation for those people who have kids, like if you have kids, and you should be terrified if you have children right now. You should be terrified if you have children of color. If you have black children, let me just put it that way, very, very simply. If you have black children, you should be very, 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 very afraid of what's to come for them. Because at the end of the day, it's like you're in a situation where everything that people are seeing about us is negative. You know, if I go in my yard and I get bit by a garden snake, how many times do I need to get bit by a garden snake for me to realize that I can get bit by a snake? It now becomes snake spite. So if every time I see a music video and it has guns flash and so forth and so on, and people get robbed or whatever, or every time we turn on the situation, we see a rapper getting killed, a rapper being murdered, a rapper being robbed. We see, black women out, acting, uncouth or whatever we might want to say, that unladylike. If we see all these things going on, this is no longer like, oh, all black people aren't like that. How are you going to prove that it's not? You have overwhelming evidence that that's how it is. So it's like, so people have now started to accept that, hey, there's something inherently wrong with you guys' culture. And now you're going to start seeing a situation where no one's going to want to deal with us. And if you start looking at how the situation really is once you start to add immigration into that, right? So before you had to only deal with one demographic. Now you add immigration and you got folks coming from all over the world, and now they're being programmed for them to tell us that you still ain't shit. So now you might have been fighting one demographic, now you have to fight them all. So how does that going to work for us in the future?
To kind of bring it back into music, when hip hop is at number one, and catalogs are being bought up, and then AI is coming into the scene, you have to really ask yourself, where is this going? Because it's almost like a purging process is happening. What happens when all of these things go into full effect? What happens when we don't own any music anymore at all? When all our catalog is all bought up? When AI is involved all the way, fully integrated all the way, and hip hop is no longer number one, what happens then? It's like we're losing out. What happens to the culture?
Culture goes away.
And then what happens? What happens to the entrepreneurs, the businesses, all of these things?
That's what people are not understanding, man. Is that if you don't control the culture, if you continue to let other people control the culture, control the narratives, if we don't take control of the culture, they're going to take it from us. They're going to say they're going to deem it as no good to society.
Yeah.
That's what folks are not really understanding.
They're going to gentrify.
You see, that's real shit. That they're going to gentrify, like they're basically going to take that culture from you and gentrify the shit. Because they're no longer going to need you to create it. Like that's really that's what it's boiling down to. Like you're seeing it happen in real time. We talked about it with the whole SAG and AFTRA strike. They can do it without you. I sent you a video last week, a few days ago, of that first AI movie trailer that was done in Mid Journey and a few other joints. Like you can't even tell the difference. You can't tell the difference. You would have thought that was totally shot in a Hollywood situation. That was all prompt engineering. People are not understanding what's going on, man. And we're trying to really let these new artists understand, like, listen, you got to step your game up. You know, it's not only just, you know, about making some money, but it's also about making sure that you have to realize that our music is too influential. Our music is too influential for us not to have any social responsibility anymore.
You know, Jug, we try to have these conversations that people aren't having.
Oh no.
You know,
no one wants to really hear it. You know, people just want to say, "Hey, how do I make some money?"
Yeah, we could easily do all of that and come on this music business podcast and just tell you every day, "Oh, here's a tip for this, here's a tip for that, how to get your snares to sound like this, and how to make your music do this." And yeah. But there's nobody really like sitting you down and saying, "Hey, this, you know, after you make this music, you know, these are the effects that it can happen. What kind of music are you making? You know, is this reflective of not just you, but the culture? And where's it going?" You know, that's some real things to think about. It's not just making the money. It's about your legacy and how you're contributing to this whole culture. Are you going to be known for destroying it, or are you going to be known for uplifting it and taking it to the next level? And every artist should have that conversation with themselves, you know.
I should not be afraid to have to, you know, like, you name me 10 rap songs that I could play for kids under 12.
Well, Joe, they'll say rap. They will say that rap is not for kids. That's what they'll say. However, we know that they are marketing for to 12-year-olds, and they are doing that.
That's the game. The game is that you'll say it's not for kids, but it's marketed to them.
Right. We know that.
Like, you know, oh no, you're not supposed to listen to it, but you're marketing it to people who are 12 years old. Right. Like this is bullshit. And I don't really want to go for that. At the end of the day, it's kind of like, again, you know, I'm not saying that you got to make kiddie music. I ain't saying that. I'm not saying that at all. I'm not saying that you got to make kiddie music, but at the same time, you know, come on, like everything cannot be.
Right. The overall thing is that there is just too much music of the same thing. There's too much music being popular of the same thing. And you have to find a way for more variety, or for the music that is different, for those to get showcased as much as all the other
music.
Right.
You know, there used to be a time when, you know, an album used to say, okay, hey, we're going to make one cut on an album that has like this.
Yep.
Or I'm going to make one cut on the album for the ladies that sound like this.
Right.
That's, you know, and we used to have those albums that were constructed that way, that kind of had, you know, yeah, my core would have this, but there would still be a little bit of something here that would be like,
there was some thought behind it.
Yeah,
I got my radio singles. I got my conscious record. I got the record to make you think, the record to make you drive to. I got my club banger. Like, it was
a little bit of a balance. And, you know, and you tried to do all of that in the context of you as an artist, right? Like, how do I showcase all of these different elements of me? You know, it wasn't just 10 songs of the same shit over. Like, okay, like, at what point does it stop? How many people are we going to shoot on the track again? Right. Like, how many people? How much twerking are we going to do on the track? How much?
How many times is this one person? This person's going to bend over in her video.
Oh,
like every time, you know.
I cringe for the fathers out here with these daughters, man. Because, you know, I have a very hard time. Like I'm trying to get my kids into this music, man, and it's like, okay, what is the example that I can play for them? What's the example? Like, hey, to my daughter, hey, you could do it like this. Like,
Right.
what's the successful example?
Right. Right.
You know, not the one that's kind of the underground legend. You know,
Right.
what's the prime time example of?
Because all of the primetime ones that are quote unquote successful right now are the ones, bending over in the videos every moment. As soon as you turn the record on, as soon as you see the video, it's the first thing that's done. As soon as they on a show, turn around to the back to the audience, bend it like
And then you know what they'll say? They'll say, hey, we do it because men buy it, but the numbers don't support that.
nah, man ain't buying it. He just watching it.
Yeah, like men ain't buying it. So that's the thing that's kind of tricky to me. It's like, they'll say it, yeah, they always doing it because you men supported it. That's what men want. And listen,
You get the attention. That's
right,
all you're getting. You're getting the attention. You're getting the promotion. It's actually the cheapest way to get attention and promotion. To kind of put yourself in those situations because sex sells, or does it? you know.
well, it used to, and I think you have some things that are changing now in the landscape in terms of, people don't want to say the word sex sells anymore because, now there's a whole thing where people talking about like, human trafficking and all of that stuff. So that's now become to the forefront. So that's not really the thing that people want to talk about. But like to your point, bringing it back to the music, it's like, okay, how do we get it back? How do we start to, I think it starts with these conversations that we have to start saying, okay, you know what, we do need to have some standards. Like, what are our standards? What is our 10 commandments? What are the things that we don't do? Like, we have to set those standards for ourselves here and say, hey, these are 10 things that we just don't do anymore. And whenever we see it, that can't go out. We can't post that.
Right.
We can't put that on the blog.
Yeah.
We just can't. We can't put that in the blog. Like, oh, it's news. No, it's not.
Everyone has to be like held responsible in some sort of way. Because then it leads you to ask, where are we going? Like the direction as far as hip hop and the culture of hip hop. Where is it going? Like, where do we see it in 10 years? Will it still be here? And if so, at what degree?
If you're not getting the number ones, it's not going to be here. Like, once you stop getting the number ones, once it stops becoming profitable, or once you have a situation where AI can generate it, that becomes profitable because now I can do it for a fraction of what it would cost to have a real artist do it. It's like now you've lost control, and then everybody sold their catalog.
Right.
So now the old music is going to be controlled, and then once they finally decide that this music is a detriment to society, they'll wipe it out.
And they would control all the catalog, so it's not like got much to do.
Yeah. You'll never hear it again. And then it's going to be like, okay, so now the money that you would have generated in perpetuity through, IP, you're not even going to have access to that. Like, so you're going to wipe out not just a genre, but you're going to wipe out a whole wealth generating machine that a lot of us benefited from.
That's what that's another thing that just came to me just now. That they're buying up all these catalogs, and usually these catalogs is what an artist would have to feed their next generation or to give their next generation. So what happens when that's removed? What do you have to hand down or give to the next generation? What do you have? Some people may say, oh, they got a lot of money up front, but that comes down to, well, what exactly are they spending that money on?
Or what's that money even worth?
Yeah.
Because, the way inflation is, like, what's that money worth? You know what I mean? Like,
and if you trick that money off, that's it. If you don't put it into something that's going to have some real tangible value that you could hand down, then what'd you do it all for? What happens? What is your legacy? What happens to the culture? What happens to the next generation or the generation after that? These are just real like questions that, you kind of wonder, where are we going with this thing? What is the end goal?
I don't think there is. I think the end goal is to really destroy a community. That's what I think it is. I think it is to basically turn a community into a permanent underclass in their own country. I think that's what the goal is. The goal is to make sure that you can, no longer elevate yourself in a certain status, and you become the permanent underclass in your own country. I think that is really the goal. I think it's, as far as they're concerned, enough people has made it. We've made enough people rich, and now it's time to, close that gate. Because if you notice, every time there's something that makes us rich, all of a sudden it starts to disappear.
Right. But it's interesting. I don't even honestly, I don't really blame the actual artist that grows up in these environments, in these communities that's riddled with violence and, all of these things going on. I really blame all of these machines and all the things that's around taking advantage and exploiting it.
Can you do that exclusively? I think the machine exploits it, but we still have to make it.
Yeah, but let's look at it from the standpoint of, you have an artist young and is from an environment that is horrible. Right? This is all this person knows, because everyone has their story. We can't just assume that they know better or has it in them to do better at the moment. But they're in these environments and they're talking and rapping and singing about what's at their front door, what's around them. And that's what they're going to put out. Now, what's happening is, okay, they're telling their story. Fine. If that's what's going on, fine. But what we don't have is the other side. We don't have enough of the other things that's happening. We don't have enough positive stuff. We don't have enough other kinds of artists that's being promoted just as equally. If you have, and I'll scale it back, even back in the days, you had violence. You had, throw your guns in the air, and you had Straight Outta Compton. You had all sorts of rough records. I mean, Annie Up is a robbery record. Let's be honest.
Yeah,
a robbery record. You got Mobb Deep. You got like my favorite. You had raw raps. You have gangster raps. You had all of this stuff. The difference is that all the other records got promoted too. You got records from Mos Def. You got records from Common. You know what I'm saying? You got records from a variety of, you got records from Tribe. You got records from all over. So it didn't feel so one-sided. You didn't get this all day, every day algorithm, just this alone. You were able to get a nice assortment of different types of music that reflected in everyone.
I think where we are now is that, to your point, like the stuff that we had prior has basically put us in a situation where everybody is writing from the same perspective because everybody's experiencing the same thing.
Well,
you can't have a difference in music because everyone is basically going through the same thing at the same time. You don't have a situation where you have enough positive experiences for people to write positive music. And I think that's by design. I think, it was all put there. We've created a ecosystem where it's basically, in a negative loop. So how can I expect people to write things that are absolutely uplifting if everything that they're going through is absolutely negative? You know, it's and the ones that are going through positive things, they're not rapping. You know what I'm saying? It's like they're doing something else. So it's a cycle that we're seeing. Like we're seeing a black exploitation film on repeat, basically. Like, you know, it's like, where did people decide that they had to, you know, wear the clothes that they wore and stuff like that? It's because of what they saw in the movies. You know, they say art imitate life, but it was, you know, art programming life.
Yeah, but if one rapper is rapping like this and rapping this style and saying this, why should we get another rapper saying the same exact thing, the same exact way, on the same beat with the same cadence and the same everything?
It's because that's what we like. It's familiar.
I don't know if it's
So familiarity, it's easy to consume. It's, you know, I don't have to. It feels like something I've already loved.
yeah, but look, let's look at it this way. Buster does not sound like Big. Big doesn't sound like Nas. Nas doesn't sound like
We're going back too far. Like that's the problem. Like we're going back too far. We're going back. Everybody we just named is 30 years in. It's too far back. You know, that's the different standard. The standards for us now are not the same. You know, the music industry had a standard that's what's missing is that there was a standard.
So what's the standard now? Because you raise a very good point. There was a standard then. That's a good point. There was a standard to get through the gatekeepers.
Yeah.
You had to have a lyrics, you know, for the most part, banging beats. And of course, you know, every so often you were able to slide through the gatekeepers with a couple of whack artists got through. All right.
Yeah.
But lyrics, beats, you know, even being able to freestyle, there were just a lot of different criterias you needed just to be a rapper. There was a standard. So now it just seems like, as you said, there is no standard.
All right, because I can upload from my computer. There's nobody to stop me from putting it out. And there's no one to stop it from becoming popularized. Right? Because now if I put out something and let's say, for example, it's outlandish enough. Because that's really what works right now, if it's outlandish. If that's outlandish enough to kind of just get a little bit of traction, then it goes. Like this stuff would never have seen the light of day. There are some movies in Hollywood that just cannot get made.
Right.
Yeah, like you see what I'm saying? Like, so this is a standard because they know that this medium of entertainment is not just entertainment. This medium of entertainment is a programming mechanism. They know it. That's why they don't release films where the criminals are outright killing the police officers and get away with it. They don't make, you know, certain types of films.
Right.
You know, they always at the film that the bad guy always for some way or has to pay.
Right.
There has to be some sort of, as they call it, a moral situation in these movies, and it's designed this way. Or you don't have movies where there are black revolutionaries that win. All the black revolutionaries get assassinated, right? And so you have to recognize and have to realize that they understand these mediums inspire and influence culture. So they are very, very particular. They're meticulous in making sure that these things never see the light of day. And because we don't control our mediums and we don't control our mechanisms, we let everything go, and this is why we're at the state that we're in.
So can we also say the internet has also destroyed the culture, because as you just said, we could just upload it. If we didn't have that option to be able to just upload whatever, and we had to rely on the gatekeepers, would we still be in this position?
No. And I'll tell you why. If you decided to upload a video to YouTube tomorrow and it's going against a particular community, what do you think would happen to that content?
Well, let's take it down.
It's removed.
Right.
Right. So you can get on. So we can get on YouTube and we can say N-word all day. It's never removed.
So
you see what I'm saying?
If we lost the ability to upload anything we want, you know, the kind of music that is doing what it's doing, if we didn't have that option, you know, and the only way to get our music out, whether it's, you know, whatever, the only way to get our music out was to go through the formal ways of a gatekeeper, a record label. Somebody had to put you on. Would the standards still be the same? Would the standards be upheld as they were previously?
It depends on where people are moralistically. I don't think people are there anymore. I think everybody's here now for capitalistic. You know what I mean? Like everybody wants to make $1. So if the negative situation is going to make the money, then the gatekeeper is going to lean in that direction. But the gatekeeper but in our older times, the gatekeeper wasn't always just about trying to make sure that they had something that was profitable. It was also to make sure that something was coming through and it wasn't like absolutely negative to the community at large. Like that's a responsibility.
That it was actually good music, and it was
This is a responsibility to make sure that the music wasn't actually going to destroy the community. Because if it destroys the community, how can you create more music? You can't. You know, it's like so this is the cycle that people are not looking at. It's like, are we paying attention to what we're putting out here? You know, you had said something earlier before we had got on air. We were talking about the Kodak Black and the 6ix9ine record, and people were in an uproar as to why he's doing the record, with so forth and so on. And we were talking about, like, 6ix9ine himself, and what he represents, and people hate him because he decided to save himself in these type of situations. But it goes back to our community again too, and it's like, okay, if you have the opportunity to fix your community by basically trying to remove the folks that are destroying the community, you would be frowned upon. And we're the only community that gets frowned for, trying to fix the community or remove the people from the community that are harming it or destroying it.
Yeah. You're right.
We've been programmed like wrong. Like our programming is wrong. Everything the way that we're thinking is just wrong. It's not critical thinking. It's like voting against your own interests. It's like,
right. You live in a neighborhood, and if the person next door is a serial killer that's been killing people and, doing all sorts of stuff in your neighborhood, it's, if you say something, you're frowned on. You're quote unquote snitching. But the person is killing probably family members or putting your families at risk. Like,
how long before it happened to you? Like, that's really the reality of it.
Bringing down the property value, like everything you worked hard for. It's like,
there's no critical thinking, bro. Like, that's really this is what you're looking at in real time. We're upholding a standard, or there's no standard for us. Like, we're willing to deal with anything. Like, there's no standards for us anymore.
Rapper Troy Ave, and I think even 50 Cent said this also. Both of them said, like, the hood is a myth. Like, some of the belief systems that were instilled in the hood is just, like, who thought of this stuff?
Stuff,
there's a lot of things that just sound, a lot of good quotes that just sounds good. But in reality, when you think about it, it's just there to just continuously bring us down and just keep us in a certain place.
And there's not enough of us out here telling people that it's not real, man. Like, there's not enough of us coming out and saying, hey, you don't need to do that. Like, there's not enough of us coming out and saying, this is really the wrong way for you to do that. You're wasting your money going this way. You're wasting your time going this way.
You're risking your freedom doing it.
You're risking your freedom going that way, and shout out to a few folks that are doing it, the Gillies and the Wallows of the world. A few other folks out there that are just basically trying to tell people what it is. But even them, look, they still suffered a huge loss and tragedy. Everything that they tried to do, and they still suffer that huge tragedy and that huge loss. Like, and it's just a shame to see that keep going on like that. Like, it's a shame to see that, and I don't think enough of our folks are coming out, and enough people are not saying, hey, enough is enough. We all had the gangster life. We've all been here. We've all, there was a time when you had to do that life in order to survive. I don't know if that's the case anymore. Like, now that life is like just something that we're choosing to do because it's what, fashionable to some degree. Because with technology, there's no way for you to really make money. You know what I'm saying? If you're out here in the street, how long before you get caught by the police? Like, it's not a situation that it's not sustainable in times past. So nobody's really talking about the way they need to talk about it. But this is the Arkatech Beatz Music Business Podcast. Of course, it's sponsored by these books that we've put out, which is the Songwriter's Guide to Song Registration, the Musician's Guide to Music Publishing, the Musician's Guide to Music Copyrights, and also the Ultimate Guide to Forming Your Own Music LLC. Thank you for everybody who have supported that. And if you haven't gotten them already, please cop. There's some more coming out within the next 30 to 40 days.
Before we close out, like what can we say or leave with some of the viewers as far as artists that's coming up or in this creating music? What can we give them as far as hope or direction, after all this is said?
I think in your situation, I think what we should always look at is always look to tell your story. You could tell your story, but you have to make sure that you're telling your story, but you're not glorifying your story, right? Mm-hmm. I think that's the difference. I think there's a difference between telling your story.
Well, how do you do that?
And glorifying it and making it seem like what we did to survive was okay, right? Because we all come from, most of us come from these inner cities, and there are things that we did that we're not all proud of, right? So there were some things that we did to survive. And then we have to tell the story of balance. We can tell the story of the people that went for the hustle, but we can also tell for the people who didn't make it, right? And I think it's just too one-sided. I don't think there's enough morality telling. I don't think there's enough balance in what were the stories that we are telling. And if we were being honest, and if we were telling people the real truth, you would tell people to avoid this life at all costs. If we're being honest, right? But if we're not being honest, if we just want your ass to fail, we'll glorify that. If we want you to go out here and get yourself killed, we'll glorify that. If we want you to go get locked up, we'll tell you that. So I think that's the difference. I think the difference is that you can be honest and true to yourself, but at the same time, let's talk about overcoming the problem. Let's talk about what we did to get out. Let's talk about, not just how bad it is in the trench, but what we did to get out the trench. How did we flip our mindset? To do better.
I would say, study the artists prior. Study, their storyline and the decisions they've made, and where they are now. And then also just figure out where do you want to be. And have a standard. I think that's key, is have a standard, have a moral compass. That okay, I'll do this, but I'm not going to do that. You know, have some sort of standard.
Some sort of limitation, right?
Yeah.
Some sort of limit that say, okay, this is too far.
This right. You know,
Like, you know
or
what I mean? Like, but what is that?
Have some sort of respect, not just for yourself, but for the craft and the culture. You know, when you're making this music, yeah, you want to be versatile. You want to be creative. But do remember that the things that you put out there in the world are the same things that could come around and get back at you. So you have to be very careful of what you're putting out there.
That's real, man. And that's real right there. That's like, you know, you've been dropping the final jewels on them folks, man, for the last few episodes. Hey, we're gonna hold you on that. But you know, again, folks, this is Arkatech Beatz Music Business Podcast. I know this was a little bit not so music business, but more, you know, music culture. On this one, you know, we'll get back to, you know, giving you that practical music money advice that everybody tends to love. But you know, these things impact the culture. I think it impacts the money long term. And I think if we don't really address that situation, then, you know, we'll be in a situation where we'll be destroying an industry that we all love and that we all thriving from right now.
We're doing a disservice for not telling you.
Journey is real, you know, but make sure you're checking us out at www.arkatechbeatz.com. Make sure you're following us on socials at arkatechbeatz.com. And everywhere that you find us, drop a like, comment in there. Tell us what you think. Tell us what you want us to talk about. You know, we're looking out for those things. And also, if you haven't already, begin to submit music for feedback. You know, that channel is now open. So, you know, we'll be doing a few free reviews. So everybody just send those in for us when you get a chance, and then we'll go from there. But until next time,
Peace.
Peace and love. People be safe out there.